Well, the opportunity he was seeking. When the opportunity came, it appeared in a different form and from a different direction than Burns had expected. That is one of the tricks of opportunity. It has a slight habit of slipping in by the back door, and often it comes disguised in the form of misfortune or temporary defeat. Perhaps this is why so many fail to recognize opportunity. Mr. Edison had just perfected a new office device known at that time as the Edison dictating machine, now the Ediphone. His salesmen were not enthusiastic over the machine. They did not believe it could be sold without great effort. Burns saw his opportunity. He had crawled in quietly, hidden in a queer-looking machine which interested no one but Burns and the inventor. Burns knew he could sell the Edison dictating machine. He suggested this to Edison and promptly got his chance. He did sell the machine. In fact, he sold it so successfully that Edison gave him a contract to distribute and market it all over the nation. Out of that business association grew the slogan, made by Edison and installed by Burns. The business alliance has been in operation for more than 30 years. Out of it, Burns has made himself rich in money, but he has done something infinitely greater. He has proved that one really may think and grow rich. How much actual cash that original desire of Burns has been worth to him, I have no way of knowing. Perhaps it has brought him $2 or $3 million, but the amount, whatever it is, becomes insignificant when compared with the greater asset he acquired in the form of definite knowledge that an intangible impulse of thought can be transmuted into its physical counterpart by the application of known principles. Burns literally thought himself into a partnership with the great Edison. He thought himself into a fortune. He had nothing to start with except the capacity to know what he wanted and the determination to stand by that desire until he realized it. He had no money to begin with. He had but little education. He had no influence, but he did have initiative, faith, and the will to win. With these intangible forces, he made himself number one man with the greatest inventor who ever lived. Now let us look at a different situation. An Asteria man who had plenty of tangible evidence of riches, but lost it because he stepped 3 feet short of the goal he was seeking. 3 feet from gold. One of the most common causes of failures is the habit of quitting when one is overtaken by temporary defeat. Every person is guilty of this mistake at one time or another. An uncle of R.U. Darby was caught by the gold fever in the gold rush days and went west to dig and grow rich. He had ever heard that more gold has been mined from the brains of men than has ever been taken from the earth. He staked a claim and went to work with a pick and a shovel. The going was hard, but his lust for gold was definite. After weeks of labor, he was rewarded by the discovery of the shining ore. He needed machinery to bring the ore to the surface. Quietly, he covered up the mine, retraced his footsteps to his home in Williamsburg, Maryland, told his relatives and a few neighbors of the strike. Le comentó a sus parientes y a algunos vecinos, pero no me comentó a mí que yo soy el vecino, Manolo, of the strike. They got together money for the needed machinery, had it shipped. The uncle and Darby went back to work at the mine. The first car of ore was mined and shipped to a smelter. The returners proved that they had one of the richest mines in Colorado. A few more cars of that ore would clear the debts. Then would come the big killing in profits. Down went the Drills, up went the Hopes, Derby, and the Enco. Hope es el apellido del socio de Tinelli. No es Hopper ni Hope, es Hope, que significa esperanza en inglés. Hopes, Derby, and Enco. Then something happened. The vein of gold ore disappeared. They had come to the end of the rainbow, and the para-gold was no longer there. They drilled on, desperately trying to pick up the vein again, all to no avail. Finally, they decided to quit. Finalmente decidieron renunciar. They sold the machinery to a junk man for a few $100 and took the train back home. Some junk men are them, but not this one. He called in a mining engineer to look at the mine and to do a little calculating. The engineer advised that he was in the project and had failed because he thought so. The owners were not familiar with the fault lines. His calculations showed that the vein would be found just 3 feet from where the Darbies had stopped drilling. That is exactly where it was found. The junk man took millions of dollars in ore from the mine because he knew enough to see and counsel before giving up. Antes de rendirse, ¿no? Antes de rendirse. Wow. Most of the money which went into the machinery was procured through the efforts of R.U. Darby, who was then a very young man. The money came from his relatives and neighbors. Opa, de sus vecinos, pero no me mencionan a mí, que yo soy el vecino Manolo de Salto, Uruguay. Aunque en Paysandú, Soriano, Río Negro, Montevideo, Rivera, todo el mundo me reconoce como por mi antifirma, ¿no? Mi antiasignatura, o sea, la posesión que tengo en el conocimiento. Y tengo títulos también. Bueno, because they are faith in him, he paid back every dollar a bit, although he was years in doing so. Long afterward, Mr. Darby recouped his loss many times over, when he made the discovery that the desire can be transmuted into gold. The discovery came after he went into the business of selling his life insurance. Remembering that he lost a huge fortune because he stopped 3 feet from gold, Darby profited by the experience in his chosen work by the simple method of saying to himself, I stopped 3 feet from gold, but I will never stop because men say no when I ask them to buy insurance. Darby is one of a small group of fewer than 50 men who sell more than $1 million in life insurance annually. He owes his stickability to the lesson he learned from his quitability in the gold mining business. Before success comes in any man's life, he is sure to meet with much temporary defeat and perhaps some failure. When defeat overtakes a man, the easiest and most logical thing to do is to quit. That is exactly what the majority of men do. More than 500 of the most successful men this country has ever known told the author their greatest success came just one step beyond the point at which defeat had overtaken them. Failure is a trickster with a keen sense of irony and cunning. It takes great delight in tripping one when success is almost within reach. A 50-cent lesson in persistence. Shortly after Mr. Derby received his degree from the University of Hard Knocks and had decided to profit by his experience in the gold mining business, he had the good fortune to be present on an occasion that proved to him that no does not necessarily mean no. One afternoon he was helping his uncle grind wheat in an old-fashioned mill. The uncle operated a large farm on which a number of colored sharecrop farmers lived. Widely the door was opened, and a small colored child walked in and took her place near the door. The uncle looked up, saw the child, and barked at the rough. When I do want. Meekly the child replied,
My mammy say, send her 50 cents.
I'll not do it, the uncle retorted. Now you run on home.
Yes, sir,
The child replied, but she did not move. The uncle went ahead with his work, so busily engaged that he did not pay enough attention to the child to observe that she did not leave. When he looked up and saw her still standing there, he yelled at her, I told you to go on home. Now go, or I'll take a switch to you. The little girl said,
yes, sir.
but she did not budge an inch. The uncle dropped a sack of grain he was about to pour into the meal hopper, picked up a barrel stave, and started to order the child with an expression on his face that indicated trouble. Con una expresión en su rostro que indicaba problema. Darby held his breath. He was certain he was about to witness a murder. He knew his uncle had a fierce temper. He knew that colored children were not supposed to defy white people in that part of the country. When the uncle reached the spot where the child was standing, she quickly stepped forward one step, looked up into his eyes, and screamed at the top of her shrill voice, My mommy's got half that 50 cents. The uncle stopped, looked at her for a minute, then slowly laid the barrel stave on the floor, put his hand in his pocket, took out $50 and gave it to her. The child took the money and slowly backed toward the door, never taking her eyes off the man whom she had just conquered. After she had gone, the uncle sat down on a box and looked out the window into space for more than 10 minutes. He was pondering with awe over the whipping he had just taken. Mr. Derby, too, was doing some thinking. That was the first time in all his experience that he had seen a colored child deliberately master an adult white person. How did she do it? ¿Cómo lo hizo ella? ¿Cómo lo hizo ella? What happened to his uncle that caused him to lose his fierceness and become as docile as a lamb? What strange power did this child use that made her master over her superior? These and other similar questions flashed into Darby's mind, but he did not find the answer until years later when he told me the story. Cuando él me contó la historia. Me dijo la historia. Strangely, the story of this unusual experience was told to the author in the old mill on the very spot where the uncle took his whipping. Strangely, too, I had devoted nearly a quarter of a century to the hysteria, the power which enabled, o sea, le permitió a un ignorante, illiterate colored child to conquer an intelligent man. As we stood there in that musty old mill, Mr. Darby repeated the story of the unusual conquest and finished by asking, What can you make of it? What strange power did the child use that so completely whipped my uncle? The answer to his question will be found in the principles described in this book. The answer is full and complete. It contains details and instructions sufficient to enable anyone to understand and apply the same force which the little child accidentally stumbled upon. Keep your mind alert, and you will observe exactly what strange power came to the rescue of the child. You will catch a glimpse of this power in the next chapter. Somewhere in the book you will find an idea that will quicken your receptive powers and place at your command for your own benefit this same irresistible power. The awareness of this power may come to you in the first chapter, or it may flash into your mind in some subsequent chapter. It may come in the form of a single idea, or it may come in the nature of a plan or a purpose. Again, it may cause you to go back into your past experiences of failure or defeat and bring to the surface some lesson by which you can regain all that you lost through defeat. After I had described to Mr. Darby the power unwittingly used by the little colored child, he quickly retraced his 30 years of experience as a life insurance salesman and frankly acknowledged that his success in that field was due in no small degree to the lesson he had learned from the child. Mr. Darby pointed out, every time a prospect tried to bow me out without buying, I saw that child standing there in the old mill, her big eyes glaring in defiance, and I said to myself, I gotta make this sale. The better portion of all sales I have made were made after people had said no. He recalled, too, his mistake in having stopped only 3 feet from gold, but, he said, that experience was a blessing in disguise. It taught me to keep on keeping on, no matter how hard the going may be, a lesson I needed to learn before I could succeed in anything. This story of Mr. Darby and his uncle, the colored child and the gold mine, doubtless will be read by hundreds of men who make their living by selling life insurance. And to all of this, the author wishes to offer the suggestion that Darby owes to these 2 experiences his ability to sell more than $1 million of life insurance every year. Life is strange and often imponderable. Both the successes and the failures have their roots in simple experiences. Mr. Darby's experiences were commonplace and simple enough, yet they held the answer to his destiny in life, therefore they were as important to him as life itself. He profited by these 2 dramatic experiences because he analyzed them and found the lesson they taught. But who are the men who has neither the time nor the inclination to study failure in search of knowledge that may lead to success? Where and how is he to learn the art of converting defeat into stepping stones to opportunity? In answer to these questions, this book was written. The answer called for a description of 13 principles. But remember, as you read, the answer you may be seeking to the questions which have caused you to ponder over the strangeness of life may be found in your own mind through some idea, plan, or purpose which may spring into your mind as you read. One sound idea is all that one needs to achieve success. The principles described in this book contain the best and the most practical of all that is known concerning ways and means of creating useful ideas. Before we go any further in our approach to the description of these principles, we believe you are entitled to receive this important suggestion. When riches begin to come, they come so quickly, in such great abundance, that one wonders where they have been hiding during all those lean years. That one wonders, que uno piensa. Uno no puede preguntarse, porque si no uno tiene que hacer el papel de Bululú, interpretando 2 personas al mismo tiempo, pero haciendo inflexión de voz. Y esto no puede ser, podría ser posible si una persona sola hace un teatro. One wonders, uno piensa. Ahora, el conjunto de Montevideo, el Cebrita, tiene que ser, es decir, se le debe de decir correctamente bien, pero los periodistas no estudiaron lo que yo estudié, no estudiaron español como yo estudié, ni tampoco ningún otro idioma. Wanderers. El conjunto es Wanderers, no es Wander. Wander es la que se escribe W-O-N-D-E-R-S-R-S, está bien. Pero Wanderers va W-A-N-D. Wanderers, y significa los vagabundos. Wanderers, vagabundos. No es así como lo dicen los periodistas, pero los analfabetos cerrados que no saben nada y confunden fotitos chiquititas de folletos que traen dinero con dinero en efectivo y dinero falso y te dicen, che Manolo, vos andás con dinero falso, asustadísimos. Entonces tuve que alargar la carcajada y ahí comparé exactamente, en ese preciso momento, hace como más de 30 años, del analfabetismo rotundo que tiene la gente de acá de Salto y que no saben absolutamente nada y que confunden todo. Por eso ellos confunden todo y para ellos lo que les parece su escasísimo recurso mental, para ellos es lo que vale, siendo que no es así. A las cosas hay que compararlas siempre. Bueno, before we go any further in our approach to the description of these principles, we believe you are entitled to receive this important suggestion. When riches begin to come, they come so quickly, in such great abundance, that one wonders where they have been hiding during all those years. This is an astounding statement, and all the more so when we take into consideration the popular belief that riches come only to those who work hard and long. When you begin to think and grow rich, you will observe that the riches begin with a state of mind, with definiteness or purpose. Qué lástima. Bueno, terminó.